Being a high school grad, that's embarrassing.
Suddenly, the voice of my brother's father-in-law, Steve, echoed throughout the venue. It happened right after I, the older brother, had given a speech at my younger brother Mike's wedding. Unexpectedly, the microphone picked up Steve's mutter, causing a moment of silence in the hall. At that moment, normally mild-mannered Mike stood up with a stern look on his face.
"Do you even know who my brother is?"
Mike confronted Steve.
Huh.
And then, a person appeared before us to corroborate that. "My name is Bart Simpson. I'm 40 years old. I married my wife, Jade, 5 years ago, and we have a 5-year-old son. Lately, I've been too busy with work to spend much time at home, which is a concern, but I'm fortunate to have a job and a family together. I feel this way because my life has had its ups and downs. My family I was born and raised in consisted of my father and mother, and a younger brother who was 7 years younger than me. However, when I was in the 8th grade, I lost my father in an accident. Suddenly, without our main breadwinner, my family was thrust into deep grief and uncertainty about the future. My mother was a homemaker and took on part-time jobs to support us, but there were limits to what she could do. So, after graduating high school, I decided to work at an inn run by distant relatives to help support my family. It was daunting to live alone away from my family, but I had my adorable younger brother, Mike, and he had a dream. He wanted to become a police officer. Since he was little, Mike loved detective series and was always engrossed in them on TV. However, one day, he said to my mother and me,
"I will become a fine police officer and catch the bad person who took our father from us."
We were speechless when we heard this. In fact, the accident was a cover-up. It was actually a crime. My father was killed in a hit-and-run on his way home from work. At that time, I was old enough to understand this, but Mike was still too young. So, we had told him it was an accident, but he must have heard the truth from some relative. Of course, we felt outraged that our father was taken from us so unjustly, but I believe living a life consumed by hatred is a misfortune. I'm sure our father wouldn't have wanted that. It's hard about Dad, but from now on, live for your own happiness. That's what Dad would have wanted too. But Mike's resolve was stronger than I thought. He stubbornly insisted on catching the bad people. Moreover, Mike was far smarter than other kids his age. When my mother took a leap of faith and enrolled him in a prestigious private school, he quickly proved his intelligence and soon topped his class. Even if Mike's driving force was a desire for revenge, I was happy to see him grow into a fine person. I think I've somehow taken my father's place without realizing it. And Mike successfully got into a prestigious university in New York and steadily walked the path to becoming an elite police officer. Meanwhile, the case involving our father's death became subject to the statute of limitations, and we had to give up searching for the perpetrator. But over time, Mike's heart harbored a sense of justice to fight evil for the sake of the weak. Mike worked as a police officer with an unyielding spirit. I am proud of my brother who transformed hatred into a sense of justice, and I support him silently every day. Then, finally, at the age of 33, Mike was about to get married. This was truly a joyful event for me. I'm sure our father would be happy about it in heaven too. His fiancée comes from a family where her father is an executive at the largest pharmaceutical company in the country. When my mother and I went to their house to greet them, I met her once, and she was a woman with a kind demeanor. If Mike chose her, she must be the right one. Excited, I eagerly awaited the wedding day. On the day of the wedding, I went to the venue with the relatives who had been invited. I was told the ceremony would be modest, attended only by family, and didn't expect the venue to be large.
But this place, isn't it a famous luxury hotel, renting out such a large banquet hall just for family? Are we sure about this?
I also thought the wedding venue was too big for a family-only ceremony, but when we entered, there were many people gathered. It seemed that the bride's side had invited many guests beyond just family.
Hey, there are only 10 of us from the groom's side. Plus, we're a single-parent household over here.
My mother said with a worried look. The other relatives too seemed overwhelmed by the atmosphere of the venue. Don't worry about it. Let's celebrate Mike's big day. I encouraged my hesitant mother and relatives as we entered the venue. As family of the groom, we were led to a waiting room reserved for the family. There, we reunited with Mike, dressed in his wedding attire. Looking sharp in that groom's suit, "Mike, you look great," I said, and he smiled bashfully.
It seems like there are a lot of guests from her family. Are you sure it's okay? I heard it was supposed to be a small ceremony with just family.
My mother said, worriedly to Mike.
Yeah, my father-in-law decided that a lively wedding is better, so he changed the venue. But don't worry, I've explained our situation, and I won't let anyone feel embarrassed. Plus, I even received a congratulatory telegram from the police commissioner.
From the police commissioner? That's impressive. That means you being a future police commissioner isn't out of the question.
That's jumping too far ahead. But I do want to aim higher and improve the police force. That way, I believe we can create a society where everyone can live safely.
Mike said with the same smile he always had. Then, the bride's father, Steve, came over.
Thank you all for gathering here. Today is the special day for my daughter Abigail and Mike. Let's celebrate grandly.
Steve said, moving closer while my mother forced a smile, seemingly uncomfortable. It seems my mother has had a hard time dealing with Steve from the start. Even during our first meeting, she forced a smile just like now. Apparently, she's not fond of men who carry themselves with high regard like Steve. Intending to help her, I stepped between them. Thank you for welcoming so many guests. Today, in place of my late father, I will be giving a speech, so please look forward to it. I said sincerely to Steve.
Make it snappy, Bart.
Steve responded with a smile. However, his eyes weren't smiling. Not just now. But also when we visited to greet him, he spoke to me but always with a formal air. And with a bit of anxiety, the wedding reception began. Speeches from Steve's invited guests continued, and then Steve started talking. Because he used quite a long time, I had to rush through my planned speech.
I'm sorry, but please keep it to 3 minutes.
An event management staff told me. Steve had spoken for 30 minutes. However, even in 3 minutes, I could convey my feelings. I extracted only the essential parts of my prepared speech and went up to the podium. I managed to speak well, and as applause broke out, I was about to step down, relieved.
Being a high school grad, that's embarrassing.
Suddenly, Steve's voice echoed through the venue. Everyone had a look of confusion, not knowing what had happened.
It's quite something to air his dirty laundry in front of so many people, huh?
The next moment, the bride, Abigail, turned pale and stood up.
Dad, your mic is on.
It turned out that both the groom's and the bride's sides had been given a microphone each, and Steve had left his switched on, picking up his voice accidentally. Even Steve looked startled and stood up to apologize.
My apologies.
However, the atmosphere in the venue was still uneasy. Seeing this, Mike stood up and came towards me. His face showed none of his usual mildness.
Bart, pass me the mic.
It was a stern expression I had never seen on him before. Taking the mic from me, Mike first addressed Steve.
Do you know who my brother is?
The room fell silent at his words.
Mike, that was an accident. Never mind it.
Steve tried to excuse himself, wiping sweat from his brow, but Mike's demeanor did not waver.
No, it was no accident. This is a serious matter. I cannot let an insult to my brother, who is irreplaceable to me, go unpunished.
Mike's voice filled the room, causing a stir among the quiet crowd again. Hey, stop, Mike. It doesn't matter about me. Remember, today is supposed to be a happy occasion for you both. You shouldn't be making that face. I desperately tried to reason with him, but he continued speaking.
As he mentioned in his earlier speech, my brother Bart started working right after high school to manage to save up for my education. Thanks to him, I was able to become a detective. I am deeply grateful for that.
I glanced at our mother. She was pressing a tissue to her eyes, tears flowing in front of everyone. Seeing my mother's tearful face made my heart ache suddenly. This was the second time I saw her cry. The first time was after my father's funeral, when everyone had left and it was just our family at night.
Go to bed now, Bart. I'll take care of the rest. Please take Mike to bed too.
She had told me after I stayed up late to help. Mike was already asleep on a cushion in the corner of the room. I nodded at my mother's words and woke Mike to send him to bed.
Where is Dad?
A sleepy Mike murmured.
Dad is always watching over us.
I replied. It was then. Suddenly, my mother began to sob and cry. Hearing my mother cry for the first time, I was so shocked that I lost my words. Feeling like I had seen something I shouldn't have, I quickly took my drowsy brother Mike out of the room. After putting Mike to bed, when I returned to my mother, she had already regained her gentle smile.
School tomorrow. You should get some sleep. Thank you for helping. Having you, Bart, really saved me.
Since then, I've thought daily about what I could do for my family. Unfortunately, I wasn't very bright, so all I could do was work after graduating from high school. But Mike accomplished great things. He is my pride. The wedding was already beyond repair. The staff tried to intervene and salvage the situation, but Mike stopped them.
This is our issue, but it's also a societal issue. Our father was hit by a car on his way home years ago. The culprit was never caught, and the case has since expired. I view the sadness and frustration as a societal problem.
Mike said, the first time I heard him speak of our father since we were children. As an adult, I had avoided discussing our painful past. Actually, Mike, being very young back then, had scant memories of our actual father. I remembered playing with Dad often when I was little. The way he cherished and cared for our family. I felt a bit guilty about it. I had many memories of playing with Dad, but Mike didn't have that. Only the painful truth that we had lost him. So, I thought I had to take on a role similar to our father's for Mike's sake.
Bart, you left home when I was still in elementary school. I remember how lonely I felt, begging you to stay. I think I really upset you.
Mike recalled, bringing back more memories. When I told him I had a job and would be leaving, he seemed shocked. Who will I play detectives with now? He had asked, confused. Mike loved playing detective, often reciting lines from detective series in front of me and our mother. From now on, you'll play with school friends. Dad in heaven will definitely be happy if you make a lot of friends. Then Mike began to cry.
No, no.
He sobbed, clutching my clothes and not letting go. I forcibly pulled his little hands off me and said sternly, men shouldn't cry easily. From now on, you have to protect Mom. It's a promise, Mike. Understand? That might have been the first time I showed him such a stern face. He stared back at me, startled. It was painful to tell a young elementary school kid, still wanting to cling to his parents, to protect his mother. It was so hard to face Mike that I left the room as if fleeing. I worked diligently at the inn where I landed a job. Fortunately, everyone there was kind and sympathetic to my situation. After 5 years, when the inn closed, they referred me to another. And I continued to move from one region to another, learning and working at various inns. I never thought of my circumstances as hard or unfortunate. In fact, I now think they even helped me grow. Of course, I haven't forgiven the incident involving my father, but I've come to view it more objectively. So, whatever Steve thinks of me doesn't really bother me. If anything, it's just another lesson that there are all kinds of people in the world. However, for Mike, it must feel unjust.
No matter that you're my father-in-law, I will not tolerate any disrespect towards my brother, who is my benefactor. Please apologize to him, Steve.
Mike confronted Steve. Even Steve couldn't stay seated and rose to his feet.
Calm down, Mike. Now is not the time to be arguing over this. Everyone is watching.
Steve said, looking around the venue while trying to appease the situation. But Mike didn't soften his words.
Especially because everyone is watching, you should apologize. My brother has done nothing to be ashamed of. In fact, he is admirable. And there is someone here to prove that.
What? What are you talking about? Someone to prove it.
Steve looked around, furrowing his brows. Then, one of the guests from the bride's side confidently walked towards the stage. I recognized that face very well.
Henry Simpson, the CEO.
Steve exclaimed in surprise as he saw the elderly man who appeared from the guest seats.
Yes, that's right. Mr. Henry Simpson, the head of Simpson Resort Group. This luxury hotel is also under the Simpson Group. That's why I invited him here as a guest.
Mike said, looking towards me. With a slight smile returning to his face. Perhaps the indignation he showed earlier was partly an act. Mike had always been good at imitating detective series actors. And then I saw Henry Simpson, who appeared suddenly. I never imagined meeting him like this. My father-in-law, Henry, you were here. I approached Henry hesitantly, bending slightly.
Father-in-law.
Steve exclaimed in surprise at my words.
Yes, Bart here is my son-in-law. He joined the Simpson family as a son-in-law 5 years ago. We both have been busy with work and haven't seen each other much lately. But to meet here by chance.
Henry looked at me and grinned.
So, he might eventually take over the Simpson Resort Group. This high school grad.
Steve asked, to which Henry responded with a laugh.
That's still undecided. However, I don't think being a high school grad is something to be ashamed of. He has a knack for management. After working across several inns, I plan to utilize his experience in our group.
Yes, 10 years ago, I started dating a female employee at the inn where I was working. At that time, I had no idea she was the heiress of the Simpson Resort Group, and she was working undercover. When we began considering marriage, she, Jade Simpson, revealed her identity. I was shocked, thinking her parents would surely oppose. However, when I visited to greet them, Henry said to me,
"You've faced many hardships, but you don't consider them as such. I believe only such people can truly offer hospitality, because the spirit of service is about transcending hardships."
Honestly, I didn't quite understand what Henry was saying at the time. When I told Mike this bewildering story, he said,
Henry is telling you that you have a talent for service.
Realizing this, from the next day, I started visiting various hotels and inns managed by the Simpson Resort Group to learn. As a professional who earned trust, I was also granted permission to marry Jade. People envied me for marrying into wealth, but it wasn't as simple as that. The Simpson Resort Group plays a central role in American tourism. It's not a world where someone like me could just step in and make it work. One time, Henry bought a struggling inn during a financial crisis and entrusted it to me. It was a small inn on the verge of closing, but I was thrilled to be its first manager, and I struggled to come up with various strategies to turn the business around. As a result, it was a great success, and I became known in the industry as a fixer of troubled inns and hotels.
Have you heard of the fixer, Bart Simpson? Or are you only interested in your own gain, aiming for the CEO's chair without any interest in other worlds?
Mike said with a casual face. Behind him, I was worried about his wife, Abigail, who was standing pale-faced. For a bride, a wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event. Yet, because of my being a high school grad, it had come to this. If Jade, who is strong-willed, had been in the same situation, she might have caused a huge scene right here. I was feeling sorry for her. Then I noticed Abigail, who had been silent until now, suddenly determined to come towards us.
Dad, please properly apologize for your rudeness to Mike's brother,
she said, her voice trembling but firm as she looked straight at Steve.
What are you starting now? You should sit down. Children shouldn't butt into adult matters. This is an adult issue.
Steve snapped, but Abigail raised her voice.
I am an adult too. I won't always do as you say.
Her words, nearly a shout, filled with tears, struck my heart. She too must have been enduring a lot. She wasn't just some lady who had lived a carefree life. Is there anyone who feels no hardship at all in this world?
Hey, you, don't just stand there. Take Abigail over there.
Steve directed towards his wife. His wife, as pale as Abigail, slowly approached.
Why don't you try to understand Abigail's feelings? It's always been like this. You oppose everything she wants to do, and keep her confined within the house. I've always felt sorry for her,
she said quietly, determination heavy in her eyes.
What are you starting now? Anyway, the wedding is off. An elite police officer or whatever, he's from a poor family anyway. He can advance more than that. We're leaving, Abigail.
Steve reached for Abigail's hand, but Mike brushed it away.
What are you doing?
What are you doing? A father's role is to protect his family, but what you are doing is the opposite. From now on, I will protect Abigail.
Then, Abigail quickly hid behind Mike.
From today, I am no longer your child. As an adult, as a wife, I will live with Mike.
What did you say?
Steve's face turned bright red with fury. But in the next moment, he groaned her and collapsed, clutching his heart. The sudden incident caused chaos around. An ambulance was called immediately, and Steve was taken to a nearby hospital. Afterward, Mike, Henry, and I apologized to all the guests, somehow managing to conclude the wedding, but it turned into a huge disaster. Steve's condition was critical at one point in the hospital, but he managed to pull through and is now on the road to recovery. However, this incident reached the ears of the president of the major pharmaceutical company where Steve was a board member, and he was removed from his position. But that's not all. There had been rumors of an affair with a female accounting staff member, and suspicions arose that he was involved in embezzlement. Since the woman had already resigned and disappeared, the company's pursuit of Steve is expected to be severe. Even if he recovers and returns to the company, he likely won't have a place there. Moreover, upon hearing this news, Steve's wife presented him with divorce papers. She had long been aware of his frequent infidelities, but had turned a blind eye.
I have always endured my husband's infidelity and played the role of a good wife. However, I think this has had a bad influence on Abigail. She's naturally a bright and cheerful girl who laughs a lot, but she has become quiet and timid.
Steve's wife later came to us and shared,
I hope my daughter will have a happy life with you.
I saw shades of my mother in the wife, who solemnly uttered, At my father's funeral, my mother, deeply saddened, repeatedly expressed gratitude to the mourners. I couldn't help but wish for her happiness as well. Later, Mike and Abigail set up their new home and started their life together. Strictly speaking, it's 3 people. As there's a new life growing inside Abigail. I invited the couple to the inn I'm managing and hosted them grandly.
This is a wonderful place. Being able to entertain people through your work is amazing. I used to love traveling and wanted to work at a resort, but my father opposed it.
Abigail said, reminiscing with a tinge of sadness. Mike gently held her hand.
From now on, if there's anything you want to do, just tell me. I want you to enjoy your life.
Yes, but now I want to live for this child. I want to raise a child who can say with confidence that they are the happiest.
Abigail said while gently stroking her noticeably rounded belly. Watching the happy couple made me feel joyful. Anyway, today, why don't you soak in the hot springs and relax? As I stroked Mike on the shoulder, an inn staff member came to call me.
Bart, there's a phone call for you in the office.
If they came to fetch me during service, it must be an important call. Excuse me for a moment, I said as I stood up.
Isn't it Jade? I heard you haven't been home much. You should prioritize your own family first. Your son is still young, you need to do fatherly things for him.
Just as Mike said, it was Jade who had called. Apparently, our son had developed a high fever. I explained the situation to Mike and decided to head home immediately. As I hurried towards the car, Mike followed and said,
Bart, safe drive on your way back.
There was earnestness in his expression. It reminded me of our childhood. Whenever I was about to go out, he would always follow me to the doorway and say, Take care. No matter how early in the morning, he would get up just to say it over my shoulder. He must have been scared of losing me. Even as a young boy, Mike understood everything. I returned his concern with a familiar smile. It's okay, Dad is watching over us. He smiled back, reassured.
Yes, he is.
I murmured to myself. It's all going to be okay now.